History, Form 2, First Term, Chapter 1, page 1 to 15. Lifestyle of our ancestors. Lesson objectives. Children will learn about the lifestyle of the people of ancient Sri Lanka. Learn about the various occupations they engage to earn their livelihood. To discuss about the grades of craftsmen who were skillful in different crafts. To discuss that ancient Sri Lanka had a highly flourished trades. Learn about great values that ancient people had. The ancient people adapted their lifestyle based on three key areas, namely agriculture, craftwork, trade. Now we are going to discuss about agriculture. Most of the ancient people of our country lived in villages. The most of the people selected agriculture as their main source of livelihood. The agriculture sector of those days consisted of two main categories, namely chain cultivation or highland cultivation, paddy field cultivation or wetland cultivation. Chain cultivation. Chain cultivation is also called highland cultivation. Food crops like grain, vegetables, and yams that were needed for basic substances were cultivated in chainas. Chaina cultivation done using rainwater. Chaina cultivation is considered to be the oldest method of cultivation in the world. In Sri Lanka too, chaina cultivation is very old method of cultivating crops. A particular area of land prepared by clearing some extent of wilderness and setting fire to it is called a chaina. The chainas of the olden days are referred to as sen in Umanga Jataka and as pitibim in stone inscriptions. An extent of land in forest, usually one which was situated a little away from the home of the farmers, was selected for making chaina. Preparing of land for a chaina was done with manual labor either individually or in group. According to story that the Mahavansa tell us, 5 brothers of a certain family who lived in the village of Nisalavitiya in a colony named Giri in Ruhuna during the region of King Kavantissa got together and cleared a forest to prepare chaina for cultivating black gram. Farmers had to tell to prepare a chaina. In the process of cultivating chaina, the farmer had to carry out a number of tasks until the harvest had been gathered. The process of chaina cultivation involved 3 steps. The first one is selecting a suitable land for the chaina. Second one is cutting down the wood, clearing the land and setting fire to it. Removing stump and roots and tilling the land is the third step. A chaina thus prepared by clearing the setting fire to the virgin land is called Navadali Hena, which means a chaina that is being cultivated for the first time. Such virgin lands are considered to be extremely fertile farming lands. In addition to such tasks, the Chena farmer had to look after the cultivation until the harvest had been gathered and also to protect it from wild animals like elephants, wild boars, sambar, porcupines, and monkeys. In the olden days, farmers adapted various methods to protect their chainers from wild animals. Some of those methods included building a stockade, making a bonfire, keeping guard from a watch hut. With the start of the rainy season, farmers started cultivating crops in their chainers. Various kinds of cereal crops like millet and huracan were mostly cultivated in chainas. According to literary sources, crops like green gram, mackerel, paspalum, ginger, mustard, cumin, a kind of paddy named alvi, sesame, cotton and sugar cane, and vegetable like karambu, solanum, brinjal, ash pumpkin, and various kinds of yams like innala and sweet potato were cultivated in chainas. Earlier, even paddy was cultivated as a chaina crop. The kind of paddy that was cultivated in China was called alvi. A chaina or field in which alvi was cultivated was called an alhain. Literary works of the olden days speak of alhal, the rice obtained from alvi. According to the ancient book entitled Sihalavattu, King Dutugemunu's son, Prince Salia was given that name because the alvi harvest of the season during which the prince was born was bountiful. Sali is another name for alvi. In the past, alvi was sometimes cultivated in paddy fields too. Rat-el, Bibili-el, and Indi-el are some examples for various kinds of alvi that were cultivated in chainas. A chaina was usually abundant after it had been cultivated once or twice and the harvest had been gathered. After the chainas had been abundant, it became an area of wood once again, and the farmers went for another land for cultivating their crops. Simple tools like katas, mamatis, and sickles were used in chaina cultivation. We come across various terms in our language that were typically used related to chaina cultivation. Navatali hena. It means a chaina that has been prepared after setting fire to a virgin land. Gini Yatikawa. A shouting aloud in order to chase the animals away before setting fire to the chain. Haley Carter. A scarecrow that was made using the clay pot as its head. So we'll talk about chain cultivation. Okay, now we are going to discuss about wetland cultivation. Apart from chain cultivation, the most widespread method of cultivation that existed in the past was wetland cultivation. Wetland cultivation was also called paddy field cultivation or irrigated cultivation. Wetland cultivation was mostly done using irrigation water. Tanks and anicuttes were constructed and water was supplied to paddy fields through canals. Cultivating paddy fields with rainwater too was done in small scale. The labor of a family was sufficient for cultivating paddy field for the subsistence of the family. However, the area of cultivated land had to be extended with the increase of population. Sources reveal that a tank had been built in each village during the era of the Anuradhapura kingdom. Those tanks were called village tanks. Persons that have been referred to the Vavhamika or Vapihamika in the ancient stone inscription must be one who built the village tanks or ones who owned them. Paddy fields are usually cultivated twice a year. A period of the year during which paddy is cultivated is called a season. We often hear mention of two such seasons, namely Maha season and Yala season. Paddy was sometimes cultivated in an intermediate season in addition to the two main seasons. The stone inscriptions in Thonigala reports that paddy had been cultivated in three seasons, namely Akalahasa, Madahasa and Pitadahasa. Farmers had to toil to prepare the paddy field for cultivating paddy. Preparing the paddy field involved carrying out a number of activities. Tilling the land was done using the plough that was pulled by buffaloes. It is called ploughing. As the soil is upturned when ploughing, the weeds get covered with soil and they naturally decay and enrich the soil. Then the farmer divided the land into small fields with wheel-like bunds in order to manage water to retain the water required for the cultivation and to drain off the unwanted water. After the field has been prepared in this manner, it is sown with paddy. Animals, particularly insects and birds, often damage paddy cultivation. Therefore, farmers adopted various traditional methods to protect their cultivation from the time paddy was sown until the harvest had been gathered. Some of these methods included standing the head part of coconut rods along the bund and here and there in the middle of the paddy field, lighting wicks that had been soaked in oil. Harvesting of the paddy is commenced when the crop is ripe. It is called paddy cutting. In the past, it was done completely with the human labor. The paddy thus cut was threshing using buffaloes. After threshing, the paddy was safely stored until it was taken for consumption. The farmers built a storage bin called Vibisa for strongly paddy. Some of the terms that were typically used in wetland cultivation were Goyamma Dinawa, that means thresh the paddy, goyam kalaya, a pile of cut paddy, kamatha, the threshing plough. Animal husbandry. In addition to chain cultivation and wetland cultivation that have been discussed above, animal husbandry too was another main source of livelihood of the ancient people. Animal husbandry means rearing of animals for obtaining meat, milk, and eggs for food, and rearing them for agriculture and transportation purpose. Since ancient times, the cattle, goats, poultry, and pigs had been reared by the livestock farmers of our country. Cows that were used to obtain milk were called kirigiri, which meant milk cow. In the past, 5 nutritious things such as milk, curd, butter, ghee and butter were obtained from cows. They are known as pasgorasa, 5 tasty food obtained from cow. According to Mahavansa, King Pandukabaya had spent his childhood in a village of cowherds called Duramadalava. And ancient people did not have modes of transport as efficient as those used at present. They used cattle for transportation of people and goods. The cattle that were used for transportation purpose were called galmeevum and galgon. Transporting goods in a pack that was placed on the back of cattle or pack bull was called tavalam. Poultry farming was done in order to obtain eggs and meat. In addition to that, goats had been reared for their milk and meat. Okay, next we are going to discuss about craft industry. There were different types of craft industries established for the need of the ancient people. People who were skillful at producing goods worked in these industries. They were known as craftsmen and they sometimes live in groups. It is visible that these industries sprung in the areas where the raw materials could be obtained easily. The following are some of the craft industries that existed in the past. Those are metal, pottery, sugarcane, cotton, and gem. Okay, next we are going to discuss about trade. Trade too was one of the main sources of livelihood of the ancient people. As in the present day, there existed two types of trade activities, namely trade within the country, internal trade, trade with foreign countries, external trade. Okay, now we will see about internal trade. Although barter was the most preferred system of trade in the ancient time, coins too were occasionally used in exchange of goods. Bartering is the system of exchange by which goods are directly exchanged for other goods, although cash should usually be paid when buying goods. In bartering, other goods are given in exchange of what is bought instead of paying in cash. Together with the expansion of trade, there evolved trade cities. Anuradhapura and Magam are two examples for such trade cities. Sometimes such trade cities had been referred as a nigama in ancient sources. Those who became wealthy by engaging in trade lived in these cities. It seems that there have also been foreigners as well as local among such people. Those who were engaged in trade organized themselves as separate groups. Such trade organizations were called huba. There were several trade guilds in which foreign trades had organized themselves. Nandest and Vala Nijjar are examples for such trade guilds. Each of such trade guilds used separate symbols in order to establish their identity. They were called sales. In addition to trade cities, there also existed trade villages which were involved in trade. Such trade villages were called Pattanagam or Patungam. Shops had been set up along the street for selling goods. Various items like pots, textiles, jewelry, and food items were sold in these shops. Sources report of an incident where the giant warrior Suranimala, who came to Anuradhapura from a village called Magama in Ruhuna, had brought perfume from a shop in Anuradhapura. There is an inscription called Badulla stone inscription pillar which has the laws and rules that related to the control of the market as stipulated in the inscription. Goods that are being brought to the market should not be purchased on before they enter the market. Balance and weight which had not been approved should not be used. Betel and areca nut should be sold after placing them in proper holes. Okay, now we will look into external trade. As Sri Lanka is located towards the center of the Indian Ocean, it had a highly flourished trade relationship with foreign countries since ancient times. India, China, Rome, Persia, Arab and Southeastern Asia were prominent among those countries. Items which were available in Sri Lanka, namely ivory, pearls, gems, spices, medicine, valuable timber and elephant were traded to foreign countries. In the past, Sri Lanka was called Ratnadeepa because it had gained a high reputation for precious stones. The natural harbours such as Matota, Gokanna and Godavaya were very important for Sri Lanka's foreign trade. It was in these harbours that loading of exported goods and unloading of imported goods were done. Part of imported objects that had been used in this country in the past and different type of coins belonging to other countries have been found in archaeological excavation at various sites. Sources report that King Bhatikabaya, who once ruled the Anuradhapura kingdom, sent messengers from Lanka to Rome in order to import beads that he needed for the adornment that was made to decorate Ruanveli Sare. These trade activities were mostly done along sea routes. Ships of different size were used to transport people and goods. Ancient sources reveal that ships belonging to countries like India and Persia often arrived in Sri Lanka. Sources available in China report that strong Sri Lankan ship consisting of several decks and flights of stairs were seen in the harbor of China. Okay, now we will look into the culture of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a country where people of different ethnicities reside. Sinhalese, Tamil, and Muslims are those ethnic groups. They belong to different cultures. Therefore, diverse cultural characteristics that belong to different ethnicities are visible in our country. Culture can be defined as the collection of different characteristics such as beliefs, customs, social habits, clothes, food style, ethics, entertainment of a particular group of people in society. There was a great change in the ancient society with the introduction of Buddhism. It was visible that people worked in mutual cooperation in common tasks, like Attam method is the exchange of labor, and in marriage. Marriage is a very special occasion in person's life. Ancient society considered marriage to be something that should be highly respected, for the unit that is called family evolves from marriage. Even in the past, parents made every effort to arrange marriage for their children from families that suited their family backgrounds and lineage. Entering into marriage following customs and tradition with the consent and blessings of parents was the practice that was established in the ancient society. Children with moral, virtuous, and good behaviors were admired by adults. Unlike in the present day, lavish wedding ceremonies which flow fashions, marriage ceremonies in the past were simple and meaningful and were conducted in a respectable manner. The ancient people had the great quality of coming forward without any hesitation to support their relatives and neighbors when they run in trouble, special like funerals. As far as funeral arrangements of the ancient society are considered, it has been revealed that there had been separate cemeteries allocated for different social groups. There also existed practice like cremation, burial of the ashes that remain after the cremation, and depositing of corpses in tombs in forest had existed. Ancient people had great values like looking after their parents and live in mutual cooperation. Our society, which has a long history, is rich with customs and values. Ancient people, who were very keen in fulfilling their duties, respected and took care of others. Ancient sources reveal how not only common people but kings too took care of their parents. The Mahavansa records how King Agabodhi's servant, who ruled during the Anuradhapura kingdom, took care of his mother. Okay, in this lesson we talk about the agriculture, craft industry and trade were the main livelihood of the ancient people. And we discussed about the chain cultivation and paddy cultivation. And also we discuss about the grades of craftsmen and the trades that have in Sri Lanka and about the ancient people's great values. Thank you.